Welcome back to another episode of the Wildlife Photography News. This is the November 2023 episode. What we cover in this is what has been released or announced from the manufacturers or software vendors. We won't cover rumors and speculations, just what has been released. Let's say Canon finally comes out and says, we are in development of the R1. They've never said that yet. We know they are, but we won't speculate it when we go by what the manufacturer says. So what happened the month of November for camera manufacturers? Well, we'll start with Canon. Canon released 3 new lenses. The first one was a wide-angle APS-C lens. I won't get too far into that one because that's really not our bread and butter when we're doing wildlife photography. Yes, you can use wide-angle lenses to take some really cool shots with environment with some animals. It depends on how big your animal's in the frame, too. The next lens that really piqued my interest, but it's a little bit out of the range at $3,000 for an L lens for what it is, was the 24-105 2.8 lens. Really, really cool. I think it's a more of a video-centric lens as opposed to a wildlife user's lens, or it could be a good portrait lens too. But being able to shoot 2.8 to that whole range, that's really nice. I'd like to get my hands on it to test it and play with it a little bit, but really I think it's really more of a video-centric lens. The lens that got us Canon shooters really excited in this little trio of lenses was the RF 200-800 lens. I released a video just recently about my thoughts on that lens because I got a lot of questions on it, so I'll link that down in the description so you can go down there and watch it later after this one if you haven't seen it already. So what is this lens? Well, it's an externally zooming lens, and it runs from 6.3 to f9. And we'll talk a little bit about this lens after I give you the specs on it real quick. It weighs in at 4.5 pounds. It's 12.5 inches folded up and extended. I'm not sure what exactly the length is on it. It has a minimum focus distance of 2.6 feet at 200 millimeters, and out at 800 millimeters is 10.8 feet. You get different variances in between that. I think you get 5, almost 6 feet at 400 millimeters and 9 feet or so at 600 millimeters. So that's not too bad. That's in par with most lenses of that length and that focal range at those minimum focus distances. It also has 5.5 stops of image stabilization. It uses a USM focusing system. They say it's dust and weatherproof resistant, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the back end of this video about dust and weather resistant things and weatherproofing, things like that. It has a focus control ring and 2 lens function buttons. What's nice about this lens also compared to the RF 100 to 500 was it will work with teleconverters all the way from 200 all the way up to 800, which is really, really nice. And as I said earlier, I released a video on the 2 to 800, my thoughts on it, because I got a lot of questions and messages about that lens. But real quickly to give you a synopsis of that video, and I'll link it down in the description, you can watch the whole thing about it, is I think it's going to be a really great lens. It's going to sell really well. We don't know exactly what the image quality is going to look like, but here in about 3 weeks we will, because they'll have production copies out in the wild. And hopefully I've got mine by then. Around December 14th, I think is when that guy ships. But we know sharpness is going to be fine because every manufacturer now, Nikon, Canon, Sony, Sigma, Tamron, Olympus, Fuji, whoever else, all the lenses they release now are extremely sharp. Even the cheapest one in Canon's line for wildlife, the 1-400 RF, is extremely, extremely sharp. I was so surprised at how crisp and clean all those images came out and how well that lens. That is a great little lens for just walk around, just shooting stuff. You can use it for macro lens. You can get really close to it and shoot flowers and bees and stuff like that. It's a really cool lens. But what I'm getting to is that lens is extremely sharp. Then for sure that this 200-800 is going to be really nice as far as image quality. I'm not too worried about sharpness on lenses. So when I do reviews, I'm probably not going to cover sharpness unless I just see it's just horrible sharpness, like it's bad all the way around. Or I've got 2 lenses and it's just night and day difference on the sharpness. If I see that, I'll talk about it. But for the most part, if you watch most videos, what you're noticing is when they go into the sharpness of these 2 lenses, comparing them, they'll really go, it's really close a lot of times. I know it's this 180 to 600 when they're comparing it to other lenses, and even I'm looking at them, the sharpness is extremely close on these images when you get them both in focus, critical focus, and good same exposure and everything. You look at them, it's very hard to tell the difference of 2 lenses. If somebody just handed it to you blindly, you may have a hard time picking which lens is which lens anymore because the sharpness is really, really good. Where you're going to see the difference in those is going to be the color rendition of the lens. So what is the coating, the glasses and elements, and how does this lens reproduce colors that it sends to the sensor to the camera to capture that image? That's where you're really going to see the difference in color rendition, and also autofocus speed and motor speeds and hit rate and things like that. How's it communicating to the body? So that's what I'll use to cover lens reviews is, you know, the autofocus, hit rate, and color rendition, what do those look like? And if I do see something crazy with as far as the sharpness, then I'll talk about it. But most videos I probably won't talk about sharpness that much because all these lenses are fantastic. But yeah, that's the main thing about that lens. You know, the f9 is not a big deal. Sharpness is going to be great. Just depend on what the handling's like with the hit rate, the focus, and how does it feel in the hand, things like that. So moving on to Nikon. Nikon didn't have anything this month. We didn't have any releases this month. All its stuff was last month with all the craziness. Now moving on to Sony. Sony had a huge announcement this month. It's one that nobody saw coming. We knew the camera was coming and we knew it was going to be announced, but they had no clue what this camera was going to be like. Even all the guys they sent out to review the camera, the influencers, the videographers, the photographers, all that folks that went out to it, they had no clue what they're going to see. They announced it all exact same time across the world, and that was the A9 III. And why is this A9 announcement so, you know, amazing and really exciting? Well, it's for one thing, global shutter. And for those that don't know what global shutter is, what it does, it exposes the pixels all at once when it takes an image, as opposed to all the other cameras that have a sensor readout speed with a rolling shutter where it reads it from the top to the bottom. And so why is that a big deal? Well, let's say you have a slower sensor speed on a rolling shutter camera, a camera that reads from top down, like the R7, the A7R5, cameras like that have this 30 to 60 millisecond readout speed. Well, what happens is you'll get, if you move your camera fast, you'll see bends and poles or straight lines, or you'll have birds' wing positions out of, you know, going crazy when they're doing their wing flaps, or some extreme conditions when a bird's high in the frame and has water reflection in the bottom of the frame, the wings will be open here, but they'll be closed here because by the time it read from here to here, the bird changes position of its body and their reflection. And that's what rolling shutter gives you. And now with the R3 and the Z9, that readout speed is so fast that you don't see any of that. So those sensor speeds are getting so fast, so close to what we've been wanting for this global shutter that Sony gave us by exposing everything at that instant right when it takes the picture, because it hits all the pixels at the exact same time. So you do not have rolling shutter. With the R3 and the Z9, you may have a touch, but it's really hard to see. It's so fast. So that's the direction Canon and Nikon were going, was trying to get that, you know, sensor readout speed as fast as they could. But Sony beat everybody in the market by giving us a global shutter. Like I said, there are video cameras that have global shutter, but this is the first hybrid stills/video camera, one you can hold in your hand, that has a global shutter in it. So that's what's so fantastic and really nice about this camera that makes it so exciting and why so many people are really excited. Let's talk a little bit about that camera. It's a 24.6 megapixel camera. It will shoot its fastest shutter speed 1/80,000th of a second. That's because the global shutter is so fast. The camera touts that it's 8 stops of IBIS, which is really interesting. Has a vari-angle screen, the same as seen on the A7R5. Camera weighs in at 1.6 pounds. One of the really neat things, again, about this global shutter and being so fast is you can shoot 120 frames per second in RAW. Okay? And that's what's crazy. The R3 will do this, but it's like, you know, it's not really just gone in a second when it does that. And the Z9 will shoot 20 frames a second. It'll shoot in JPEG 120 frames a second, but not RAW. Now, how does it do that? Well, it's pretty neat how it does it. You can shoot any frame rate you want. It doesn't shoot 120 frames a second just by hitting the button. It only does it in a turbo mode. So about the 120 frames a second, how that works. So you set your camera up to take your shots normally. You're not in 120 frames a second at all times. So don't think that if you have that camera, anytime you hit that button, you're going 120 frames a second. You've got to initiate that 120 frames a second to happen. So when you go into your camera, you set it up to either 5, 10, 15, 30, or 60 frames a second. So its base shooting when you hold the shutter button down is 60 frames a second. The max it'll do. It'll go down to 5 frames a second. So let's say you're setting this thing at 30 frames a second, but then you see something crazy, you want to go 120 frames a second. Well, there's a button on the front you hit that will turbo boost that. So you're shooting 30, you hit that button, now you're 120 frames a second until you hit the wall in the buffer. And that's how you achieve it. Now, what's really cool about that, but I'm sure you can reassign this button somewhere else, but I think is really cool about that type of technology is you can set your frame rate to whatever you want, and you can have that button. Now, you don't have to go to 120 frames a second. Let's say you're wanting to shoot just at 15 frames a second. But you know there's some bursts where you want to go 30 or 60 frames a second, or 120. So you can set that second bump on that button to go into the turbo mode to be whatever speed you want. I'm shooting 15, now I want to go to 30. Hit that button, now I'm at 30 frames a second. Or I'm at 15, I want to go to 60 or whatever and go to 120 frames a second. So you could be at any of those speeds from 5 all the way up to 60 and then jump up to a higher speed if you want to. That's what's really cool about that, is hitting that little turbo button. Pretty ingenious by Sony. I kind of like that. That'd be really nice because I don't always want to be shooting in 30 frames a second or 20 frames a second. Maybe I want to shoot slower when I've got a moose or something like that. I don't want to shoot that fast. But if I do have something where maybe bolts and runs and I'm sitting at 10 frames a second to, not go through as many images because I don't need that many, and then I'm stuck at 10, it takes off, I get less frames, I could go back to 20 on the Z9 or 30 on the R3 or things like that, or the R7, or 40 on the R8, which is crazy also. So that's what's pretty neat about it. So I like that feature about it. And also they added pre-capture to this. Canon and Sony already had this on several cameras already with the pre-capture. It's pretty cool. You half hold the button down, and then when you hit the shutter, it'll have 1 second of shots prior to that at whatever frame rate that you wanted to capture it in, which is really nice. It's pretty neat for when you got birds taking off and landing or stuff like that, where you just want to hit that exact moment. It's really, really cool. There were two things that were interesting when they were reviewing these cameras, that when Sony gave them the cameras to review this A9 III. And it was, first one was they did not let them save RAW files to the card to look at and to review. They only let them save them in JPEG. They could shoot in RAW, but they couldn't save in RAW because they could RAW plus JPEG. And that was really interesting. I'm sure there's a reason why they did and didn't, but it leaves a lot of questions, and that's where I'll leave that. The second thing is Sony's real big about wanting to talk about how much dynamic range all their cameras have. Well, they didn't say anything, any of the press releases, anything I can find. Even the folks who were there said were not told what the dynamic range was. They wouldn't tell them. And that's really interesting. The camera also does not have dual base ISOs like a lot of Sony cameras have, like the A7S III, FX3. In non-S-Log, you have 1000 and 2000. That's just where it gets cleaner when you're in video. And an S-Log for the A7S III, FX3 ZV-1, it's 640 and 12,800 at the high end. That's where it cleans up in video, which is really, really nice. That's why it's one of the best low-light video cameras out there on the market. And what is the base ISO in stills in this camera? It's not 100, it's not 80, it's not 60, it's 250. That's real interesting. You're going to be shooting a higher ISO at the base, and that's probably because the global shutter maybe needs that to capture that all at once. And an S-Log 3, the base on that is 2000 when it cleans up, 2000 ISO. So if you're shooting video on that camera, you're going to need some ND filters for sure. But if you're shooting video, you got variable ND filters anyway. I have a bunch for when I shoot video. And that's pretty much the basis of that camera. So what are my thoughts on this camera? Well, I think it's a really cool camera. To be able to shoot at 120 frames a second in RAW is really, really nice. To turbo boost that is a really cool feature that I think is really nice for photography when you got something moving, like a bear attacking a salmon, an osprey hitting the water on a fish, hummingbirds coming in and out, birds landing and taking off, things like that, action shots, That's where it's going to be really cool. You could be shooting at a lower frame rate, hit that button and jump to whatever fast frame rate that you need for whatever's going on. That's really cool. To be able to take this at 5 and go at 120, that's really, really cool. Really neat feature. Like I said, the global shutter, fantastic. No rolling shutter, fantastic again. But like I say, in the R3 and the Z9, they're getting so fast. The rolling shutter is almost not there already, but that is really cool to have global shutter. That'll really push the other companies to get that global shutter, that technology out into more cameras. The one Achilles heel on this camera to me could be the ISO or the dynamic range. I think the dynamic range is Sony. They're going to have that dynamic range. That's just what they're known for. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think image quality is going to be great. We're already seeing that. Oh, and also to have the 120 frames a second with the autofocus working at the same time. That's great. We'll see when we get a production camera how well that is. But with what they were doing, showing it while, the 120 frames is going on, the autofocus is tracking also during that, which is really, really cool. But the Achilles heel to me for wildlife photographers is the same thing the Achilles heel on the Canon R3. 24 megapixels. That's, to me, is the killer. Yes, I love the R8 at 24 megapixels, but why? $1,500 R8, $6,000 R3, A9III. A big difference there. If I'm paying that much money, I don't want 24 megapixels. And why is that? Why 24 megapixels in this? Well, probably for the speed of getting those, files moving through the camera. That may have been the thing. And who is this camera for? That's what we got to remember also. This camera is more for sports photographers and for reporter photographers, things like that, news photographers. And you also have to remember that the AP reporters and photographers have signed a contract with Sony also. They've had contracts with Canon and Nikon in the past, but they have a sole contract now with Sony. So all your AP photographers have Sony A1s, stuff like that, A7R5s. So this camera coming out that's geared right for those guys, and those guys really like that 24 megapixels, the R3, the 1DX Mark II, things like that. That's the cameras they like. They like that megapixel, the smaller size. A lot of them even shoot JPEG, not RAW. So that's what that camera is really geared for. Will it be good for wildlife photography? Oh, heck yeah, it'd be great. 24 megapixels, though, that's kind of where the same reason I own R3 is it's hard for me to get around that price point being 24 megapixels. Like I said before, I can put up with the R8 being 24 megapixels, and that's a really fast readout sensor for a $1,500 camera, that R8 too, and the R6 Mark II, basically the same camera. But, at $1,500, I can deal with 24 megapixels with that fast. And I use it for a B camera for video, and actually it's my overhead camera today for the next part of this video. But that's really my thoughts on the camera. I think it's going to be a fantastic camera. If it was cheaper with that 24 megapixels, and that 4,500, somewhere in there, 4,000, maybe close to 5. I could probably swallow it a little bit more as far as that goes, but at $6,500, that's pretty hard for me. And that's just my opinion, okay, guys? My opinion. That's me. Everybody else may think really different, but I think it's going to be a really cool camera, and I can't wait till they actually get the production version of this camera out to see what all those questions to answer. There's more questions after that 24-hour period when those folks had that camera than actually were answered, because those things about dynamic range and things that Sony didn't say were really interesting. So it'll be really cool to see that camera come out and see how it performs. I think it's going to be a great camera. I'm really excited to see it in the wild and go out and test it myself if I can ever get hold of one. Now let's get into the tips, tricks, and fixes section of the wildlife photography news. And what are we going to cover this time? We're going to talk about protecting your lens. And what I mean by protecting your lens? Well, I'm talking about protecting it from excess rain, sand, dirt, mud, putting it on rocks, things like that. Just protecting the lens from bumps, scrapes, things getting in it, all that kind of stuff. Because like the RF 200-800 lens and this 1-800-600 here from Nikon, they say they're dust and weather resistant. They're not as weather resistant or weather sealed as this 500 f4, but even this 500 f4 only has so much weather sealing on it. So what is the first thing we can do to protect the lens? Well, the first thing you can do is like what I have here on my 500 f4. Well, 3/4 of it. The top two parts I don't have on here. I took them off the other day. And that's a neoprene cover. And these neoprene covers that I use are from Lens Coat. And I've got a link in the description on where you can get all this stuff that I talk about. But this just keeps it from getting, especially when you set it down on rocks and things like that and bang it around. Don't bang it around, but you're setting it on there. It keeps you from getting scratches, and you get dust and sand in here. It helps a little bit with the water a little bit, because it'll absorb some of that water. And just like here's the lens hood for my 180-600, and I've already got a small little bitty scratches on this thing from just having around without having the neoprene cover like I have on here. And we want to prevent that on this new 180-600, and I haven't put it on here, which I do need to put it on now. So that's what we're going to do. we're going to put the neoprene cover from Lenscoat on my 180 to 600 here. Now, yes, these come in camouflage patterns, but they also come in even in solid patterns with these things. And camo patterns, yeah, they can help if you have real skittish animals where you want to try to hide yourself. Here in Alaska, they're not as needed to camouflage or get into hides and stuff. And a lot of times the hides, you don't know if something like a big bear is coming behind you to eat you too. So we really don't do hides and that kind of stuff. But we do kind of camouflage sometimes, but it's not necessary. But when you're in places you need a camo, then yeah, the camo patterns really do help. Why do I have the white, the snow pattern on my lenses? Well, two things. It's 6 months out of the year we've got snow. That's the first one. And the second one is I shoot a lot on the beach and the rocks and stuff, the gray rocks. So this kind of blends in a little more. So if I do need to kind of blend in the environment a little bit better, that really helps. So we're going to put the lens coat on this guy here in just a minute and show you how it goes on the lens hood and the body and that, and show you how to put them on there. But first I want to show you the second part of this video on how to protect your lens. And this is from the rain and the other stuff and snow and mud. That's this right here. It's a raincoat made by Lenscoat, same company that makes these neoprene covers. I'm not sponsored by Lenscoat. They don't give me stuff for free. This is all stuff I bought over the years. I've tested a lot out, and the Lenscoat stuff is the best stuff I've found so far, the ones I like the most. If you got one that you like better or use different, just tell me about it in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. But this is the raincoat. Let's get it out and show you how it goes together. And it's real simplistic. That's why I like it too. And they make a bunch of different ones. Some, like this one's the pro one where you can kind of put your hands underneath it and different parts. They have some that are just one piece. But let's get this out. Hope this Velcro is not too loud. Right, let's get it out of here. It comes in a little pouch, which is really nice. When you get done with it, you can put it back in the pouch and stores up well. So it's in two pieces, this pro one. So let's set this aside. And this piece here is for your lens hood. I don't have the lens hood for my 500 f4, but I do have it for this one. So you literally just, again, it's got Velcro here. You just put it in here. You cinch this Velcro down. And you take the back part when you put it towards your lens, and you just cinch this little drawstring down like that. And now you have that set up on your lens hood to keep that part dry. Next part is for the body of the lens, and we'll put it on this 500 f4, and this is it opened up. This part on the bottom, again, forgive the Velcro. Just open this piece up, and this is where your lens foot's going to go in, and your camera goes in this end because you have these little pockets. I'll show you in a second. So you just slide your lens with your camera body. I don't have the camera body with me, but you just slide this guy in here. And same way with the other one. Now you don't have to put this on here. A lot of times I don't even put this on. I leave this in my bag. So when I got my lens hood on here, I would just put it at the end of my lens and then cinch it down. I wish I had the lens hood for this one. But anyway, when you get here, all you do is pull this Velcro strap here. Get it right there. Cinch it down right there. And you're good to go. But let's just assume you have your lens hood right here, and that's where that would be. So this would be all that. In the back, you just take your cinch right here and cinch it down. And this is where the body would be. And this thing keeps falling because I don't have anything on it. But then you take your lens foot, like I said, you just open that up, pull your lens foot through there, and then Velcro it back down. And now your lens is covered from rain. You would have the body right here, and you have this little thing right here that opens up, and you put your hands in here. So you can sit here and have your hands in there and work in the camera controls, and you see it right through here where your body should be. But that's how the raincoat one works. It's really nice. And you can see it. I've got it in some of the videos where this is all put together. I don't know why I didn't bring the lens hood and the body in here to show you it all put in here proper, but it's really nice. It's big. They had come in different sizes. But this guy right here, this to me is a must-have. You have to have a rain cover for your cameras. Go buy one. Doesn't have to be Lenscoat. You can buy it from other manufacturers, but the Lenscoat ones to me are probably the best made ones that I've found. But these have been my favorite. These are ones I've tested and messed with a lot. So I'm going to set this guy here next to me out of the way. And we'll get into the neoprene cover. So I've already pulled the top part off this guy to get to this. So here's what it comes in. All these different little pieces here. So each of these pieces go on the lens, and they should be concentric circles. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with the lens hood first, put this lens coat on here. And it's going to be this piece here. Now, one thing I'll tell you is take your time with this. Don't get like you got to get it done real fast, because these things are tight, and they're supposed to be tight so they fit on there, they don't slide. And when you look at this guy, kind of look which end, it's like the tag part is the narrow end, so that's going to be the top of the lens hood, and the wider end is going to be the bottom. So you basically start with the widest ends, and you just start working it on here. So now I got her started. And just kind of move it a little bit at a time, because you can't just pull it all on there at once, and just kind of just work it on there. It's kind of a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle when you get to these next pieces when you're putting on the body. The bigger pieces you can tell because they're the right size, but when you get up here tighter, higher up on the lens, then you got to start kind of sizing them up and make sure you got the right one. There's been a couple times I've put the wrong one on there. I have to take it off and start over on that piece. And that's it. Lens hood is done. Nice. Good, good, good. So now let's move on to the next part. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this lens foot off, because you got to slide this all the way down. And this lens foot will be in the way every time, because you want to take these going down this way as opposed to come from the other direction, because this is a cone, so it's easier to go down the cone than... Let's start with the largest piece, which will go on the barrel of this lens. Got the lens cap on, so don't worry about setting this down here. So all we do is just like this. Let's see why we took the lens foot off, because it makes it a lot easier. So there, that piece is on. All right, let's move on to the next piece. All right, it's going to be this guy, and this piece is going to go over the focus ring. Let's get her on here. All right, second ring is on here. So now let's keep on moving down. So it'd be this one next. These smaller rings are a lot easier than those bigger ones. So this one goes on in two pieces, because you got a control ring right here. So this first piece goes below the control ring. More pieces on this one than my other one. So now the next piece comes down here and goes for the control ring. All right, that's control ring. That piece is really easy to get on compared to all the others. Next piece is, this is the lens collar piece here. So this goes on this piece here. So when you put this on, what you got to look for is make sure you got the right side of these, because these strap lock mounts are not in the same spot. There's one down here low, one's up here high. So you got to look on this ring that one of these cuts is low, the slits, and one's higher. So that's where we got to put it on there. So let's rip it around here. All right, there is the lens collar piece. When you put this back on, you got to get it right in the little grooves. You'll hear it snap in there. Once you do that, you can cinch her up. All right, we got one more piece left to go, and that's the last little bit here. Almost there. And now she's all put together. Looks really nice. Let's get the lens hood on here real quick. Have it all put together. Here we go. So there it is, all put together, all set up, nice neoprene cover on it now. So now, when I put it down, I set it on top of something, set it in the truck, set it on rocks, when I'm setting it down on the ground, I won't be getting this lens scuffed up at all as it sets on rocks or stuff like this. Because earlier when I kind of bumped on the tub, you could hear it thunk, thunk, thunk. Now it's just a dull thud when it touches there. That's my tips, my tricks for this time is protect your lens, neoprene cover, good lens caps that go in here. I've got another video we'll talk about some replacement lens hoods that I love. They're custom ones. Raincoats, all that kind of stuff to keep your lens from getting wet, getting dirty, getting dinged up, and all that fun stuff. And as always, guys, if you like what you're seeing on this channel, please subscribe. Doesn't cost a thing. Like, share, leave me comments. I answer all the comments. And think about becoming a member if you want to support the channel. And also hit the affiliate links. That also helps support the channel too. If the gear you like, I've got links to these too. Just hit those affiliate links, and that just can be a small little kickback from them to keep the channel running and going and growing. And there was a giveaway in the last video, 2 print giveaways, 2 8x10s. I didn't see many entries for it yet. I don't think you guys caught it. It's hidden somewhere in that video on how to get a chance on 2 8x10 prints. I'll probably pick it, or I may let you guys pick those 2 prints, which you want, whoever wins it. And also remember, when we hit 10,000, hopefully in December, we've got 2 giveaways along with some prints and some special stuff. I've got at least 3 special things I'm giving away. One of them came in today, one of them came in last week, what the giveaways are, and they are neat little items, very neat items, and that's going out to you guys for just saying thank you for watching the channel, subscribing, commenting, being a part of the community, and just following this ride along. But as always, guys, till the next video, get outside, go run that shutter.